through the lot of lines, which means they don't put anything.
Where is this?
And I'm right here for women's league also. I put when I was married, it says women's league. I won't put women's league.
I prefer to do the synagogue. Right.
Expecting a lot, Mrs. Sonny, Mrs. Steve? I didn't expect anything. Oh, from here. This way, when I wear it, and polish it down, I need to. Is the mic, it's where the mic is working.
So we had this cruise mic working, so I was scared. Our email didn't work because the Comcast changed
Okay.
something with the email. So our emails never come.
Okay.
I heard about
Okay.
that, happened to Ellen too.
Okay, and if I want to talk to somebody,
Right.
if you want to talk to somebody, just
Well, I
turn.
told you, I didn't.
No, because
I mean,
there's no mic
yeah.
up there, there's no mic.
I mean, you can turn it
okay.
around.
I figured this is what it was going to be.
Yeah.
So,
But if somebody in the audience has a question or brings something up and you want them to hear, you can repeat the
I'll just
question.
repeat it,
Yeah.
like always.
Yeah, if you need anything, let me know.
Well, you're very kind to have gone shopping.
Well, I had to go. I'm having the executive directors for lunch tomorrow, so we're having our meeting here. So I was there. I'm like, I'll just.
Those, these things are
The scones?
delicious.
Are they good?
Oh
Okay.
my gosh, yes.
Maybe I'll take one.
We're cruised out. I think we're cruised out.
This is the blueberry one.
Okay, good.
I
I
don't-
was at Wegmans. I was in Meows. I didn't know. So I was like, oh,
Someplace in Aruba and just sit.
I don't like Wegmans. It's too big for me.
I've been to the islands.
I'm overwhelmed.
yes. I get overwhelmed with shopping. If anybody wants to call, we have some salt. Yes.
Is there Anna around?
Yeah, she's in her office.
My best thing.
Would you do me a favor?
Okay.
Give it to her?
Yeah.
You won't be able to see.
So it's that time if we want to start. If we want to start. Okay. Yes. Yes. Thank you to Barbara for getting this and to Eileen. She got it. And she's good people here. That. Okay.
This bill
All right.
with the 7 letter, 979.
They had the square, I want to say.
Okay.
You were busy.
This is-
Yeah.
So. So. So we're set up. We're set up to start now. So. Okay. So. So I'm, So we're going to talk about harems, and I'm assuming that none of us know a whole lot about it. I certainly didn't. Rabbi said to me, "How did you choose that topic?" Well, there are two reasons I chose it. I was reading prior to Purim, yes, you can't hear me?
You have the softest life, you really have.
Well, you know, this, yeah. Except that it's not long enough. Okay, I'll try to do this without having all of this slide down. So I got into this because of the Megillah, I was reading it, and I just was a little bit curious because I knew nothing about harems except, it was a lot of women that were kept isolated, and usually it was a powerful person that was in charge, and basically that was what I knew. And then I was watching dinosaurs on Netflix. Dinosaurs. So Did you know that before the Triassic period, which was 299 million years ago, there was a period defined by a supercontinent that had a very arid climate, and that was where evolution of mammal-like reptiles began. Aren't you excited to hear this? Okay, so that era ended with the great dying and mass extinction due to volcanic activity. The last scene in that first episode was this animal trying to get back, and this is what was said in the narration, to his harem of females. Over 299 million years ago, there was a harem. And I just thought, I've got to learn more. So, anyhow, more background, maybe more current background. So who is familiar with Scheherazade? Most of us a little bit. To those of us who aren't familiar of the tales of Scheherazade, the harem conjures up to us women with dark eyes, dressed in exquisite brocade outfits, delicately filigreed jewelry, lounging on tasseled pillows, dangling their feet in bathing pools, and guarded by an imposing array of slightly rotund but muscular eunuchs who stand silently at the doors and windows, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Scheherazade. While this exotic image is intriguing, it is for the most part a figment of Western imagination. What do we or can we know about this elusive institution? All ancient Near Eastern societies practiced polygamy, and they all provided some manner of separate housing. The women's sections of the monarch's household often had hundreds of wives and concubines. In antiquity, the term for the women's residence varied. It was called the women's house in the Bible, Beit Hanashim, and then there was another name for the section in Greek area, etc. And the actual term harem is probably relatively late, after the rise of Islam in the 7th century CE. It's derived from the Arabic word haram, I guess it is. It's Haram, it's spelled, which means unlawful, protected, or forbidden. For example, the sacred area around Mecca and Medina is Haram, closed to all but the faithful. In secular usage, it refers to separate protected areas of the household where women, children, and servants lived in security. Harem can also refer to the women themselves, or it can be the term for wife. However, we do not know precisely when it became common usage for women's protected living quarters. Under Islam, the harem, or whatever it was called, underwent a number of significant changes. As a heavily Islamicized institution, I don't know if that's a word, but it became the social and cultural agency by which male heads of households circumscribed the lives of their women. Most knowledge of harem life today is derived from the period of the Ottoman Empire, which was the 15th to early 20th centuries. In these harems, women were wholly excluded from public life. Seclusion was prescribed for two reasons, principally for the preservation of the regal line and for the Sultan's control of his women's sexuality. The life of a woman, particularly the slave and concubine, in the Sultan's harem was virtually worthless, and any minor infraction could and did result in death. The Ottoman imperial harem, 1299 to approximately 1920, I was surprised to get that date, was a secluded, strictly hierarchical and powerful institution within the Sultan's palace, housing his wives, concubines, children, and female relatives. Didn't know that for sure. Far more than a sexual pleasure space, it was a highly organized political center where women, led by the Queen Mother, often wielded significant direct influence over the empire's government. So women did have a say. So I mentioned the Ottoman Empire. It was vast. It existed from 1299 to 1922. It went from Turkey across 3 continents. In the 16th and 17th century, it went from Europe, Middle East, and North Africa. You might be curious, how were the Jews treated in the Ottoman Empire? Not bad. They were not first-class citizens. They were considered second-class citizens who had to pay additional taxes. And I hope this won't slide away. A map. This is a map of the Ottoman Empire. Wow. Would you recognize it? I'm sure. The orangey pink area is the actual Ottoman Empire. The area, and you see it goes down into Africa, and this part, and on top of farther north up here, are called the vassal, or they were on the periphery. I'm sorry, I can't project. This is as loud as I can get. Anyhow, the vassal, they called them the vassal territories of the Ottoman Empire, were largely self-governing, often located on the periphery. They paid tribute and provided military service while allowing the internal autonomy. And they included a lot of places I cannot pronounce, but to include Moldavia, Crimea, Transylvania, Georgia, and several other places, lots of other places. So, where do the popular conceptions of harem life come from? Today, many of our misconceptions about this institution derives from the Western European travelogues. Travelogues written during the 17th to 19th centuries that formed the foundations for 19th century Western art and romance novels. Today, it is acknowledged that previous conceptions derive from the most basic level from cultural, biased Western tendencies specifically constructed to demean and trivialize non-Western cultures. In representation of life in the East, whether in the guise of history, anthropology, or the arts, non-Western societies were characterized as primitive and uncivilized. Its men were criticized for both hyper and hypo masculinity, and its women were depicted as sexually promiscuous and uninhibited. This is evidence of the popularity of the highly eroticized harem scenes in the 19th century art and literature. Pictures.
Sunny, I can,
They're not great. They're not. This one is a bride. She's being dressed by somebody who is undressed.
I'll hold it for you. I'll hold it for you.
This one is a lovely naked lady. And this one is the bathing pool, not swimming pool. It's where they get clean. And there is only one person who has any clothing on in this. All of them were done in the late 1800s. Thank you very much. So what has recent research on the harem revealed? Rather than viewing the ancient harem solely as a social convention of a patriarchal society, it can be viewed in many instances as an instrument for social welfare. How? The king, who is the father, so to speak, of the country, was responsible for the young women under his domain. He would, for example, bear the economic responsibilities for daughters of slain army officials, noblemen, and others whose deaths preempted them from providing dowries for their daughters. The king, therefore, took them into his harem in order to protect and care for them. Marriage was a common means of creating alliances between the ruler and the landed aristocracy and gentry, as well as foreign rulers. I'm sure we all know King Solomon was reputed to have acquired hundreds of wives for just this reason. And King Solomon was many centuries before the story of the Megillah. Multiple wives was a primary means to demonstrate wealth and power. In antiquity, women's lives were not as secluded as they came to be under Islam in the Middle Ages. Some wielded tremendous power within the palace hierarchy, as I said, the king's mother. And every time I see that, I'm surprised. Eunuchs also wielded a great deal of power within the palace hierarchy. As guardians of the king's women, they not only engaged in court intrigue, but many were able to have fulfilling sex lives because they could not endanger the purity of the royal line. So, why do we know so little about this institution? Generally, there is very little documentary evidence from the Persian period. With few exceptions, women were essentially illiterate. There is scant written evidence from inside harem walls. The literate class in antiquity, very small percentage of men even if inclined to write about women, would not have been permitted inside the harem walls. In general, women were devalued. Their daily lives were not considered important to write about. So, then we get to the book of Esther, the harem. This is set in the Persian capital of Susa during the reign of King Xerxes I, approximately years 486 to 465 BCE. The harem was a highly structured, sequestered institution there, designed to house and prepare women for the king. The royal harem was divided into at least two distinct houses or sections. The first harem was the House of Virgins. It was managed by the eunuch Hagar. This was the initial residence for young women brought to the palace. Here they underwent a rigorous 12-month beautification regimen, 6 months with oil of myrrh, I don't know what that is, and 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics. That's my excuse. Second harem is the House of Concubines, and this was managed by eunuch Shashkas. Women were moved here after their one-night stand with the king. Once in the second harem, their perpetual status changed from prospective bride to concubine, and they typically remained there for life as perpetual widows, unable to marry anybody else. They would see the king only if he specifically requested them by name. And this is very much brought out in the Megillah. Despite the seclusion, some contact with the outside world was possible. Mordecai, Esther's cousin, walked near the courtyard daily to check on her welfare. Can I ask somebody to read the next part? I'll give my voice a check.
Sonny, I found this period in history really interesting, because once or twice I read on the Megillah, when I looked at the harem, it actually was more of a prison kind of a setting.
Oh, yeah.
And they practiced, some of them killed each other, competition to get to the king. Other ones committed suicide because they didn't get to the king. But they practiced female genital mutilation. So not to be a surprise, there were eunuchs watching them.
I'll go into this.
And they actually fixed it so that women couldn't have any pleasures.
It is a world in which all the senses feast riotously upon sights and sounds and perfume, upon fruit and flowers and jewels, upon wines and sweets, and upon yielding flesh, both male and female, whose beauty is incomparable. It is a world of heroic, amorous encounters. Romance lurks behind every shuttered window. Every veiled glance begets an intrigue, and in every servant's hand nestles a scented note, granting a speedy rendezvous. It's a world in which no aspiration is so mad as to be unrealizable, and no day proof of what the next day may be. A world in which apes may rival men, and a butcher may win the hand of a king's daughter. A world in which palaces are made of diamonds and thrones cut from single rubies. It's a world in which all the distressingly ineluctable rules of daily living are gloriously suspended, from which individual responsibility is delightfully absent. It is the world of a legendary Damascus, a legendary Cairo, and a legendary Constantinople. Istanbul was Constantinople. In short, it is the world of eternal fairy tale, and there is no resisting its enchantments.
Well,
Thank you very much. This was written by B.R. Redman in the Introduction to the Arabian Nights Entertainments, 1922. It wasn't written by me. So, from the Megillah, I've taken out some texts. This is from the time when the king was having his big party that we know about. So Queen Vashti was also giving a banquet at the same time for women of the royal house. The king's part of banquet was supposedly extended to people from the entire map areas that I showed you. But hers was just, I think, more local women that were part of her life. The seventh day, when the king was merry with wine, he commanded his 7 eunuchs to bring the Queen Vashti before him, wearing the royal crown to show only the royal crown, to show her beauty to the people and to the nobles, for she indeed was beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command conveyed by the eunuchs. We knew this part of the story. But why do you think Vashti refused to attend the king's banquet? Anybody?
She didn't like the attire.
I didn't hear you.
She didn't like the attire they chose for her.
So she was not supposed to wear anything else
I
except
heard the interpretation, but I never.
That's what it says. That's
She
specific.
wore her crown, but.
And that's why.
Goes under her crown.
So, but here are the reasons that I came up with when I was researching this, because I didn't know any of it before. Generally, in antiquity, men and women did not dine together. Vashti was, as I said, was holding a banquet separate at the same time for women. The other thing was only the concubines, who were way down on the ladder of importance, the lowest status, they were the only women that were there probably to service. That was what was kind of indicated. As queen, Vashti's assertion of independence would not have resulted in a death sentence because of her status. However, the Megillah does not say what happened to her. It could have been banishment or death. But she was not there anymore. So then, of course, the king had to replenish the person, the queen, and he couldn't be queenless. So I don't know if that's a word either. He put out the decree that was heard all over that area, the orange area in the map that I showed you. And Esther was one of those picked up for that. It doesn't say how many, but a lot of them. But what it does say in the Megillah, that Esther was taken into the king's palace in the custody of Hagar, keeper of the women. The girl pleased him, and she received kindness from him. And he speedily gave her the ointments and her rations, and 7 maidens chosen to be given to her from the king's house. And he moved her and her maidens into the best place of the house of women. And Esther had not revealed her people or her kindred, for Mordecai had told her not to reveal it. So here we're getting a little bit indication of the operations of the eunuch. They can give favors, they could they could get favors from all of this. So what do we know about eunuchs? Not much, probably. What do you know from what we've already read about their
I'm just, I received a request that if people in the audience want to answer, that we could pass the microphone around, so.
Okay.
All right, so,
Anybody want to suggest?
here, Sunny, let me do that for you. See where it reaches.
You don't have to turn it.
Okay, so do the whole thing. Yeah.
Well,
Smile.
I know that when the men that were going to become eunuchs reached puberty, their balls were cut away. Castrated. They were castrated. But that also did not isolate them from having sex with the women. As you said, they just couldn't, and they were... Oh, they took care of, they were very political. They had a lot of power. They controlled the harem. And in many ways, were not threatening to the king.
Anybody else?
Watch this, Sunny.
Okay, sure. If they had their testes removed, how could they get an erection to have sex with the women? I don't understand the...
Okay, I'll answer that. All right.
We need a gynecologist here.
Well, not really. There were many types of procedures that went from complete removal, that you mentioned, Sherry, of all male sexual organs. That was castration. Also, if it was just to remove the testicles, they could have an erection. There were different levels of the surgeries and how much. All of them, they could not procreate. So, and as Sherry said, they were the protector and the guardian of the women. They also were tutors of all kinds of things, including how to keep the king happy. They were political, as Sherry said. Contrary to conventional wisdom, some eunuchs were able to engage in really full sexual activity because they didn't have the ability to reproduce, and that was the key. And because the eunuchs could leave the confines of the harem, they were major procurers, of a variety of aphrodisiacs and sex paraphernalia that were taken by the women, the girls, for their one night. So the eunuchs were providers of all of this. And many of them rose to high elevated positions within the court hierarchies through the Queen Mother, basically. She was the one who conferred their power. So they did a lot. They were very important individuals in the harem. So,
Just a comment. Last week, NPR...
Wait a second.
So just an interesting aside, last week NPR ran a series all week on older, mature adults. The name senior is not acceptable anymore. You have to be a mature adult. I renewed my license, and it even says that on the Pennsylvania drivers. They have mature drivers. Okay, so anyway, they ran a series on mature adults and sex. And that was very interesting because everyone who responded differently to what sex meant to them. It didn't always mean what we think. So just as an aside, we're still discussing what that means.
So it was when we got to this point about Esther's one night, she was made very special by her eunuch, the one that took an interest in her. And the way it worked, according to the text in the second chapter, she would go in the evening and leave in the morning for the second harem. She would leave the initial harem for the virgins, and then this wasn't just Esther, this is how the system worked. And she would go into the second harem in charge of another eunuch, and the king's eunuch, who in the story is Shashgaz. He was the guardian of the concubines. She would not go again to the king unless the king wanted her and summoned her by name, and we know this part of the story. So, and then it says also in that chapter, and the king loved Esther above all other women, and she won more grace and favor with him than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a great banquet for all his nobles and servants. I'll repeat that. Then the king gave a great banquet for all his nobles and his servants and called it Esther's banquet. And he granted a remission of taxes to the provinces, and he gave gifts as befits a king. Question: where was Esther at this time? Not there. Esther's banquet, she wasn't there. It wasn't important. It's just the fact, I guess it was just an excuse to let the information be given out, and just an excuse to give a remission of taxes to the provinces and to gifts for him, and this way Esther was honored by having another banquet from the king named for her. So yes.
Did Esther and Ahasuerus have any children? Repeat the question. Sorry.
Did Esther and Ahasuerus have any children? I never saw anything like that in the Megillah. Maybe.
There's nothing in the Torah or anything else that says that anybody was descended from Esther, right?
There was nobody descended from Esther, so they didn't talk about that. So then the situation was that Haman. This is where Haman gets involved. We know that story, and again, Esther kept apprised of what was going on because of her eunuch, who was the intermediary between Mordecai and Esther. So they're important for all kinds of reasons. Then Esther called on another eunuch, not her, the Sashkash, a different one, whom the king had appointed to serve her, and gave him a message for Mordecai to learn what all this was about. And he went to Mordecai, and he got from him all what was going on. And he also got from him a copy in writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, the Jews, and to show this decree to Esther and let her know, and to charge her to go into the king. And as we already I had mentioned, and you understood beforehand, she had to be called into his presence, and she was. So, in so doing, all of these go-between, using the eunuchs as go-betweens between her and Mordecai, and probably others. In so doing, the eunuchs ingratiated themselves to new queen, gaining power and status within the court. So, another question I have that was brought up, was homosexuality common in the Ottoman Empire? And it was. It was common and accepted practices, but it was only accepted until the 19th century, at which point it was less accepted in the attempt to modernize the Ottoman Empire and to ameliorate relations with the Western countries. And another question is, we know now when harems were first mentioned in history, somehow, it was quite a few years ago. Are they still in existence? Are the harems still in existence? And everybody is nodding their heads and saying, I'm sure. And yeah, they are. They're primarily through polygamous arrangements in some conservative cultures where wealthy men have multiple wives and secluded female family members. It's often tied to traditional Islamic or customary laws, and also through some modern issues like human trafficking, and where women are forced in exploitative harem-like situations. And so I'm coming to thinking about, was Esther's life a victory? Couldn't think of another word. A success or a tragedy?
I think it depends on how. If we're looking at it from our time, it was certainly a tragedy. But within the confines of, the period that she was living in, it was a victory. She became queen. She got a lot of myrrh, looked good, and but there have been stories about modern harems, especially in the kingdom. There was one woman who was brought there and was kept in the harem, and things hadn't changed. Except I don't know if they were castrated or not.
How did they take care of the children? Did they share?
The children were kept in with the mothers. Yeah. In the harem.
So just think about this. You're told that the king needs a new wife. You have a daughter. She's pure. And you're going to put her there to lose her purity to the king and maybe not be accepted as the queen, which you wonder how anybody would even think about that unless the thought was ahead of time that perhaps by being the queen, she could do things for the people.
I was just going to say, Sherry, I don't think they had a choice. The people that the king sent out through all the provinces, they were soldiers. They picked them up. And if they looked good to start with, probably they were picked up to be taken to the king. So
They talk about how these women can't.
yeah, all right. All right. Flory is saying
These young women
they were young women
were, groomed, for beauty, for the king.
who were to be groomed for beauty.
And that's a pleasure of the king. Were they abused? Absolutely. Were they physically abused? Were they sexually abused? Yes.
Could be. They could have been raped. They could have been sexually abused.
But they ate.
They ate. They were taken care of in many other ways. So when I was thinking of this, I think Esther. I'm sorry. Esther is simultaneously a victory and a tragedy. I mean, she was taken probably against her will. She left her family. Her parents were gone, and the harem was a despotic king. And like you said, they were going to be used, however, not necessarily the way these women wanted to live. They had no choices. Now, Mordecai, on the other hand, he ended up as a high official and ruler. He ended up, I think it was definitely a victory for Mordecai, but a mixed bag for Esther, for sure, because we don't know what she accomplished, if anything, if that was her goal.
So you can repeat my question. Since we are not certain of the relationship between.
All right. We are not certain of the relationship between
Mordecai and Esther.
of Queen Esther, yeah.
Because the language is ambiguous.
Right. And it doesn't end the story. It just ends with Haman, basically. And that seems like the end, folks. So anyway, that is the story as I have learned about it from.
They had that I've read about is that there were a lot of killings of children in the harem. Women that they wanted to make sure that their child was the one that the king was going to.
All right, Sherry was just saying that there were a lot of killings of the children because of the lack of certainty who they belonged to. But these women were not. I don't know about the concubines because they were. They had a different life afterwards, but probably still guarded, and the eunuchs were safe. Oh, where did they get the eunuchs from? They were usually slaves that were found, and they were given total works as far in their surgery. so they were unable to procreate. So the other ones, I mean, they were sure that these soldiers or slaves that they got from foreign wars or from slavery, wherever they got them, were not going to have any children of their own. I don't know. I don't like the climate down there. So, anyone else want to make a comment? I thank you. I guess we turn this off. Okay. I hope you learned something a little bit, that information.
So, thank you, Sonny. You did a great job. But just, Eileen asked for a gynecologist or an obstetrician. So I practiced, I practiced maternal child health for close to 35 years. You would not believe. So when do you think female genital mutilation was outlawed in our country? 1996, it became illegal. Yes. Isn't that amazing? And I can tell you that in my practice, we had patients, men, come in with their pregnant wives to deliver. We had to open their vaginas so they could deliver. And the men then insisted that we re-sew them, which you can't find anybody who will do. But that was not illegal in this country until 1996.
What nationality were they mostly?
I would say they came from African nations, from India. And I'm quite sure that there are parts of this country where they still practice it even though it's illegal. Yeah, it's amazing. We think we're civilized. We're not.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else have some interesting information, sad information?
I think we should open a spa. Volunteer, 1 week, we go in, all kinds of oil.
I don't know what it smells like, but I would like some.
I don't like the smell of garlic.
I think that's what it is, though.
Yeah.
I also want to thank Sunny very much on behalf of our fearless leader, Eileen Nolan, who is recuperating from some very minor procedure. Next time you see her, she'll be wearing sunglasses. But anyway, it's because of her that this continues. And I would say, normally we have a sheet to pass around, but if you're interested in doing a wonderful presentation as Sunny did, or providing snacks for the next time, just let Eileen Nolan know and you can sign up for that, okay? So thank you all very much and help yourselves to...
And thank you, Eileen, for the snack.
Barbara picked everything up.
Look at that Megillah there on the chairs. There's a Megillah.
You know, it's really interesting, you know, that Esther is
Is that your
really,
creation?
you know,
I have no idea how to turn
being
this.
married to Michael Sargent, you know.
McGill, Sonny, is that your McGill case on the table?
That's this is another Megillah that I have.
I don't know.
You have a load of McGillis.
I have these two, one that is done by children, and one that I think that is a Megillah. I just happen to have another Megillah. I don't know. I have
Yeah, Barbara.
Standing on English, turn over here. You went turn like over, and everybody has one in.
Yeah. No, New York.
So you put it in.
Huh? June.
I thought if you come in, it was over and said, you sure you didn't?
And I discovered something very sad about my eyes.
I know, I see my
I
IEP is
fine
scared.
for paper.
They stay, right? They don't,
About 2 verses
they don't
into
come out.
October, it was in stores.
Okay, my hairdresser,
Huh?
her, who was trimming over the door.
Whatever
because you're in town. And they put a thing in it, almost there.
Does she recover from the burn?
Yeah,
She didn't need it.
she didn't need it. And her whole headset is like,
Sunny is,
you know,
she's just well.
she really is.
Yeah.
So,
She did it before.
Sometimes,
So yesterday you told me,
services and I sit.
this one I can,
So I have her met the work.
Yeah.
She just is so.
She did art and choice.
I got,
There's
there's
complicated
Mark showed me shoes online.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's always pictures.
pictures. Yeah, I have to send Sharon pictures. Sunny, Sunny,
There's no laces.
the pictures. I have to, Sharon Goldstein wants to see those black and white pictures. I'll take a
And
picture.
two insoles, so they, you know, it got bigger
Where did I put it?
on swell.
I didn't touch
But it was
anything.
really good because I couldn't,
In the folder maybe? No?
No, that's not my folder.
No, I mean that one there, the book?
Yes,
Oh,
it was being guarded by this
by the
scone.
cookie, by the scone.
hey, you know what? I threw them out more, I wanted to save the food more for that.
All of this is in Greek, I think.
God, it smells
There's
I had 3 triple X, like they gave me after my split.
I think what you said, can you take your thumb off of the,
And I wore them until I wore it. That's the only thing.
Okay.
I could wear a bandage for all.
Oh, I didn't have,
Oh,
well,
I had it every day.
no, I didn't have that. Mine was just,
That must have been fun watching the dinosaurs and hearing that, and like,
I mean, when I saw that, I said, oh my gosh.
had you already picked harem as a topic, or?
I said
it.
thank you, Sunny. Sharon Goldstein. I'm sorry to
No, no, go ahead,
interrupt
go
over
ahead.
this, I'm sorry.
that's the least of your problems.
Yeah,
Maybe
except
I-
I wear shoes.
I was thinking, you know, Eileen asked me, what do you think? What can we do? Because we didn't have anybody for this week, this month. What
The
can
live
we
stream
do?
is still going strong.
So anyway, I told her, you know, I have these ideas. I'm always thinking about what would be interesting to hear sometimes. But this was, I didn't know anything about it, so I couldn't talk about it. I had to research everything. So, yeah, I like doing, many years ago, I had, when I left nursing, I got a job at Charity, working with the new assistant Sure Joseph. And she and I used to, I did a lot of her research. She had an idea, and I did a lot of her research. So, I mean, some of it was so long, it was for a whole series of things. But some of it was kind of interesting.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But that's when I started thinking about what can we present that's kind of fun, but.
Anybody see a pink hat?
So,
I think my hat on the table left there, a pink hat.
I don't know, but the live stream is still on, so whatever you're talking about, you get away from us. I don't know how to turn it off.
Can we turn it off?
You know what,
No, you just put it back up.
Barbara will be down in a second.
Just put it back up and plug it in.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I don't want to touch anything.
So, we're Sunny, this is fun subject.
take this away
Okay.
and take my the
I
guns away.
want to introduce myself, I'm Linda Shire.
Anytime, I'm nice to see this.
Okay, I've seen your name. Hi, nice to meet you in person.
But you used to wear your hair shorter, didn't you?
I did?
Yes, I'm like, I know, she looks so familiar.
I did, I had it cut around like,
I doubt.
I doubt.
Yeah.
decided I had to go a longer time between haircuts. And I said, you know what, I can handle this. This is all natural.
No, this is like your chairs either.
Say hello to Sharon. Hi, Sharon. Anybody else will say hello to Sharon also?
I said, bye, ladies.
Oh, it's good to see
Hi,
you.
Sharon, Elise, good to see you. Or not.
Yes, yes, it's, tonight is, no, last week was recorded. Sharon also says hi, Elise.
Was it your hat? Thank you for all your additional
What's that?
I thought that he had changed it.
I don't know, Craig changed it, yeah, I'm not sure, because I have some kind of a meeting for, the editor.
Thank you so much.
As well.
Is there a hat near where you're sitting, Gail?
No.
Oh, for goodness sake, I walked in with it.